Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Atlanta Motor Speedway, or Hotlanta as we call it. It's fast. It's big. It's a track where it provides some very interesting storylines. And for the first time since 2014, NASCAR goes under the lights in Atlanta on a Sunday night. And last night we saw balls out, phenomenal racing while raising the rain. At the end of the night, one of the stars from Hendrick, who's had a career year, emerged on top at the very end. Let's get into all that went down last night at Hotlanta. Number 1, William Byron, Willie B as we like to call him, captures his 4th win of the season, winning last night's rain-shortened Quaker State 400 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, beating Daniel Suarez, AJ Allmendinger, Michael McDowell, and Kyle Busch for the victory. William Byron really had a crazy night, shall we say. He started in the middle of the pack of the race because the Chevrolets didn't really qualify well, and they probably put more focus on the racing than they did qualifying on the front few rows. Byron was kind of running around the middle of the pack. Then, in the end of stage 1 and start of stage 2, and everyone came in for their pit stops, Byron actually had to restart tail end of the longest line because he had a penalty for an uncontrolled tire. So that put him a little bit behind, but it was still relatively early in the race, and he started to slowly and methodically work his way up through the field. But by the time he got to the top 20 on the front stretch, he gets turned by Corey LaJoie. I guess he came down on LaJoie, or LaJoie got into him. It was kind of, they both made contact. Byron went around bringing out a caution, and then ultimately limped it to pit road, but lost a lap in the process. And I'm like, this is going to be quite a recovery for this 2014. They're going to have to find a way to get back up to the front of the field. They're going to need a caution to get their lap back. They did get one. I think it was at the expense of his teammate Kyle Larson going around for a spin in turn 4. Byron dodged the wreck. He was able to get back on the lead lap because he was the only car lap down at the time, and just kept slowly working his way up to the field, hanging around the top 15 for the most part. But by the end of stage 2, a couple guys were relatively short on fuel, and with weather in the area, Byron's team stayed out with a couple of other drivers, and he started to pick them off one by one. I mean, the 24 car has been known to run very well in Atlanta, not just from Jeff Gordon's days, but William Byron. I mean, he did actually win the first ever reconfigured race at Atlanta Motor Speedway last spring, and did it really well. He was so good in that race. And this race, when he got in the lead, he was so good, nobody could pass him. Guys were trying to build runs to pass the 24, but with no luck at all. Then we had a caution come out for an incident in turn 4 with Bubba Wallace and Ryan Preece, and ultimately NASCAR slowed the field down, and by that time, the raindrops began to sprinkle on the racetrack. It took NASCAR a couple laps before they decided to bring everyone down pit road. And when the rain began to intensify, NASCAR called the race quits, saying, we can't get this race back underway. Byron was declared the winner. Fun fact about this win, this was his 4th win of the season. Entering this year, William Byron had 4 career wins in total. He won the night race at Daytona, the regular season finale, the first ever Daytona regular season finale. He won at Homestead the following year, his first year with Rudy Fugle as the crew chief. And then last year, he won 2 races, the Atlanta Spring Race and the Martinsville Night Race in the spring. And after that, he's got 4 wins. You're thinking, okay, that's a good start for William Byron, but we need to see a little more consistency. Well, this year has been the year for him. He has 4 wins on the year. He won at, I want to say he won at Las Vegas this year. Yes, he did. He won at Las Vegas. He won at Phoenix. I'm trying to think of the other racetrack that he won at. I'm sorry, it's just hard to process. I know, obviously, he won last night. I'm trying to picture it in my mind. He did not win Talladega. He did not win Dover. He did not win Kansas. I know there was another race that he won. Regardless, this has been a big year for William Byron and the 24 team in general. I mean, they've had a very, very good season. You can make a legit argument with the wins he's got right now. He's the best driver in Hendrick. I mean, because Kyle Larson, even when he does win, it seems like there are races where he's trying to win the race. He ends up wrecking himself, or he gets involved in someone else's incident. It kind of seems that way. Chase Elliott is still trying to win to make the playoffs. Same with Alex Bowman. But, they haven't been as good as William Byron and the 24 team has. They did a great job last night, overcoming adversity early on. They were not the best car, but they were there when it mattered the most to win that race when they called it shorts race. So kudos to William Byron, that 24 team. Congrats on a very impressive win and comeback after facing adversity early on in the race. Number 2, Blue Ovals. Boy, were they fast in qualifying, and they were fast in the race. They just couldn't get the first place spot at the end of the race when it was called official. The Fords were so good throughout qualifying session yesterday. First 6 spots, all Blue Ovals. a lot of them were basically Team Penske and Stewart-Haas cars. That was very, very impressive by all those teams to put their cars up there towards the front of the field. Aric Almirola started on the pole, and he was so good early on in the race, leading those laps, having those Fords right behind him, basically the Ford train. They were humming along very nicely early on in the race. Then by the time we got to the end of stage 1, Almirola lost his track position, but we still had a blue oval up there and Ryan Blaney, and barely edged out Kyle Larson at the end of stage 1 to get that stage win. Then in stage 2, the Penske cars started to assert themselves at the field. The Stewart-Haas cars fell back, but we saw 2 Fords work their way up through the field, and they were the Roush dynamic duo of Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher. Keselowski and Buescher, again, they were kind of mid-pack in the first stage, and I'm like, what's going on? I expected them to be up there racing with the Penske cars and the Stewart-Haas cars working together to try to hold back any challenges from Chevy drivers or Toyota drivers, and they were just stuck back there. But when they got their track position by the time we got to stage 2, I'm like, here they come. They're going to be a threat. You know it, because Keselowski nearly won that spring race earlier this year. But him and Buescher, they got up there and they led some laps. They were so strong, competing with the likes of Joey Logano and Blaney and Austin Cindric. He had a really good race car last night. And it looked like when Brad Keselowski took the end of stage 2, when it ended under caution, it looked like the race was his, because we didn't know how far the weather was from the track. I mean, they could have hit any moment by the time they crossed the end of that start-finish line to end stage 2, which declared the race official. Well, halfway, really, declared the race official. But I thought at that time, when they ended stage 2, that Keselowski's got this win, but they needed to come in for fuel because they were relatively low on it. So they had to come in to take a chance to have some fuel and hopefully have some racing for them to try to get their way back up to the field. Well, they got back to the top 10, but unfortunately they never got to the spot that they were looking for, which was P1, because of the caution for the wreck in turn 4, and then the race slowed down and we started to have sprinkles on the track. But anyways, the Fords were very good last night. They just weren't there when it mattered. They just weren't able to get that first place finish that they would have wanted from any of those Ford drivers. Keselowski was the second highest finishing Ford. He came home in 6th, but he was probably the best car of the Ford camp when he got up there battling for the lead in stage 2. Ryan Blaney was good. He ended up finishing in 9th. Austin Cindric was really good. The best I've seen him really all year. He came home in 12th. Chris Buescher was really good early on. He finished in 15th. Joey Logano, when he got back in that deep traffic, when there were different pit strategies, they never could get back up to the front, which puzzled me. There were times where they did, but then they would get kicked back because he was in the wrong lane or just getting shuffled, and probably the car wasn't to his liking. He ended up getting 17th, and Aric Almirola finished 18th after winning the pole. I mean, it kind of sucks because at the beginning they had a good race car, but when you lost that track position, it just didn't go right from the rest of the race. But that's the story for the Fords. They were fast. They just can end up getting P1 in the end when it mattered the most. Number 3, Mother Nature. I mean, for crying out loud, the past 2 races we have had to deal with Mother Nature playing a factor in deciding the outcome of these races. Because last weekend, we started out wondering, are we even going to get the Chicago Street Course in on 4th of July Sunday? I just didn't know if we were going to be able to do it. They were 15 minutes close to calling the race official until it started to lighten up, and they got the track drivers out there and let them run the first couple laps in the rain, and then started to dry out, and they put the dry tires on. And ultimately, we had to shorten it 25 laps on the scheduled distance, even though we went to overtime. But it was a good event, even because we can run in the rain in road courses and now street courses. But obviously on the ovals, we cannot take a chance to run on the we cannot take a chance to run them in the wet weather conditions. So by the time we started stage 2, crew chiefs began telling their drivers, be aware, weather is on the way. I mean, we were tracking it the entire time because around this time of the year, especially in the late afternoon, early evening, it gets hot down here in the south, and obviously it builds up the storms and everything because of the humidity and everything. And again, it's hot. It's the summer, for crying out loud. If you have these pop-up rain showers or building storms that could last for an hour or 2 or maybe 3. But drivers were basically racing hard last night, trying to beat Mother Nature and try to put themselves in the best position possible. When the rain did come on the track, it was sprinkling for a little bit, and then NASCAR said after a couple laps, okay, we're about lost the track. Let's bring the cars to pit road. Let's hope the rain can maybe pass through, but it was just a little too much, and NASCAR called it quits. I mean, everyone knew that they were racing the rain last night. And the reason why NASCAR didn't want to take a chance after that caution for the incident turn 4 with the 23 and the 41 to go back a couple laps of racing. Do you all remember what happened at the regular season finale at Daytona last year? The whole pack goes over into turn 1, and all of a sudden cars start slipping and spinning all over the track and crashing into one another because it was raining in that section. Not just that lap, but the lap prior to that. We were lucky the lap prior to that, nobody wrecked. but it picked up the next time they went around after drivers like Hamlin and Suarez and others were complaining about the rain, saying, somebody throw the yellow. There's raining in turns 1 and 2. But yet they said, no, NASCAR sees nothing until that wreck transpired. NASCAR learned from their mistakes in that incident and didn't want to take a chance here, which I applaud them for. Yes, there are some NASCAR fans that are upset that we extended the caution laps after that wreck in turn 4, and then the rain came. But would you want to take a chance to right the whole field again, like what happened last year at the regular season finale of Daytona? I don't think so. I think NASCAR made the right decision to run a couple laps under yellow to see how the conditions were. And when you did see the rain intensify, they said, okay, bring them down pit road. And then they said, it's too much. We're done for the night. So say what you want, but I think NASCAR made the right decision to run a couple caution laps behind the pace car and then bring them down pit road when the rain began to pick up. And yeah, it sucked that we weren't able to get the entire race in last night, but that's what happens when we're racing in the summer. You're going to deal with some pop-up showers or some storms. It's how it goes sometimes. Number four driver, Kevin Harvick, in his final Atlanta race. Well, it was a pretty emotional night to start off, not only at the track where he got his first career Cup Series victory. On the opening pace laps, Kevin Harvick was honored by his former car owner, Richard Childress, who drove the first car that Kevin Harvick won in his NASCAR Cup Series career with at Atlanta in 2001. That thrilling finish, beating out Jeff Gordon at the end of that race in what was the 4th race of the season, Harvick's 3rd race of his Cup Series career. And of course, it is, the 3rd race since we lost Dale Earnhardt after he tragically died in that Daytona 500 last lap crash. It was Harvick's 3rd race, and he was battling Jeff Gordon, Dale Jarrett, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Jerry Nadeau for the victory. Ended up being Gordon in a photo finish. And that gave NASCAR fans some closure because that was the car that Earnhardt drove. And was Harvick trying to beat Dale Earnhardt at the time? No, he was trying to help the team, and he was trying to be Kevin Harvick. And what he did that day kind of lift up, some spirits of a lot of NASCAR fans, particularly Richard Childress Racing, because you could saw Richard was crying, saying Dale was with us that entire time. Danny Chocolate Myers was crying. It was a big day for not only for Richard Childress Racing, but for the sport, and for Kevin Harvick as well to celebrate his first career win in that race. And last night on the opening pace laps, Richard Childress drove that exact same car on the opening pace laps, honoring Harvick. And then on the opening, literally after they were off pit road, Harvick went alongside Richard Childress. And when they came on the front stretch, there were cheers and whistles from the crowd. It was just a special moment to see Harvick line up alongside the car that he got his first career Cup win with the man that tabbed him to fill the void after Dale died. He took a chance on that kid, and that kid did a great job with Richard Childress. It's true, he didn't win a championship with him. He came close a couple of times. But Kevin Harvick and Richard Childress, the years they were together, they had some phenomenal moments. That first win, the 2003 Brickyard 400, the Daytona 500 where he edged out Mark Martin, winning those All-Star races. They've done some good things together. And that was a special moment last night. I almost choked up, I'm not going to lie. But it was just a big moment for NASCAR, for Kevin Harvick and for Richard Childress last night. Not really much can be said about his night. He really wasn't that big of a contender, which surprised me because, again, he's been good at this track, but I think the reconfiguration has kind of taken away the advantage he used to have on a lot of these guys. I mean, he was good at the spring race until he wrecked late with 60 laps to go. He was not really a factor last night, and he spun out late in the race, even though they didn't throw the caution, but he limped it back, and he ultimately finished in the 30th spot, 4 laps down. Kind of sucks, because I would have loved to see Harvick get one more good run out of Atlanta Motor Speedway. It would have been nice if he could win, but oh well, he still has a few more chances, and he's still relatively comfortable above the cutoff line regarding the points right now. But it was a relatively disappointing result, but it was a special moment for Kevin Harvick and Richard Childress pre-race, and I enjoyed it very much. At number 5, the racing in Atlanta last night. Yeah, that might have been race of the year right there. Chicago Street Course last week was amazing, but what I saw last night was phenomenal racing from the drivers. They all put on a show. Again, this is the first night race that we ran at Atlanta since 2014, and it's the first time we're running the nighttime under this new reconfigured racetrack at Atlanta Motor Speedway, where it kind of runs like a super speedway. And what we saw last night gave me early 1990s, late 1990s, early 2000s vibes of racing at Daytona, because you saw them spread out for the most part, but still bunched together, and then you saw some big runs from 3 wide, 4 wide for the last 30, 40 laps of that race. Maybe even last 50 laps. We saw guys put on a show with a lot of moves and slingshots and battles side by side for the lead, middle of the pack. I'm like, how in the world are these guys not wrecking last night? The way they were so close to one another. That was some phenomenal racing, and this has probably been the best Atlanta race on this configuration since we started this last year. This race in the new configuration has been good, but they've also had some wrecks at times, and drawn a little bit of criticism from the fans and some other people and some of the drivers as well. But what we saw last night, and starting the race late, I think really helped put on that racing product last night, because especially when you come to Atlanta in the summer, it's so hot. That's why not a lot of fans have come to the past 2 years of the summer race. In the daytime, it was relatively hot. We started under the lights this year, and there were a few more fans this time around, and hopefully what we saw last night gets more attention for down the road. And again, the drivers, they did a great job racing last night, battling it out for 30 to 50 laps of good side-by-side racing and not wrecking each other. The only major incident we had last night as far as a big wreck was one off turn 2 when Corey LaJoie tried to come down in front of Eric Jones, but Jones had a fender in there. He got turned around into the pack and collected Ty Gibbs, Ross Chastain, Tyler Reddick, and a few other guys that were kind of mixing and mingling up at the front of the field. It sucks, but it's how it goes sometimes with this style of racing that we got in Atlanta. But I liked it very much, and a lot of the people on social media too liked it as well. It was a good show. Even Dale Earnhardt Jr. and old DW were tweeting that Atlanta race was awesome. And yeah, I do feel bad that we had to end it being rain shortened. But despite that, despite the rain, what that race showed us last night is that this configuration Atlanta can work with this racing that we have. And starting the race late, pending that we don't have any weather in the near future, that we continue to do this under lights, this works. This absolutely works. Now, in a few years, when the track begins to wear out, could this racing stop? Meaning we don't see them bunched up together like they used to be. Could it be going back to the old Atlanta service where they get a little more spread out and eventually tire wear could be a big factor down the road? Maybe. It could possibly be. But for now, we need to savor and enjoy what we saw last night and for what we have for the foreseeable future until we do see a difference in the racetrack and how the cars are affected by it, especially with the tires. But last night's race was awesome. I mean, you could, again, legitimately make an argument that that was the race of the year last night. And we still have a few more races left in the season, for crying out loud. But that was an awesome race last night. I give kudos to the drivers for putting on a phenomenal show last night. That was a lot of fun watching that racing in Atlanta Motor Speedway. Great job to Marcus Smith and everyone at Speedway Motorsports Incorporated for doing this, making this track what it is. It put on a great show last night. That was amazing stuff. Now we are off to the Magic Mile in Loudon, New Hampshire, where you get to raise a lobster as the trophy at the end of the night, at the end of the race. It should be interesting to see who's going to come out on top. And of course, this is a short track, and we are still trying to figure out this short track package with this next-gen car. We are doing some testing later this week before we get ready to go racing. Last year, Christopher Bell ended up winning the race, but we also saw other guys that were strong, like Elliott, Truex, Harvick, Kyle Busch, and others. Will any of those guys be up at the front, or will someone else, like the man who's got 4 wins this year, William Byron, do it? We shall see. But hopefully the race that we've got this upcoming weekend with the short track package, hopefully it works, and hopefully we can figure out what we can have for short tracks going down the road. It'll be a very interesting race to watch, but I'm excited to see what we can get out of this race coming up this upcoming weekend. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. I will be filming on a different location next weekend because I am going on vacation, but I will still provide content and recap next weekend's race at Loudon, New Hampshire for you guys. Don't worry about it. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Subscribe, like, and once again, congrats to William Byron and the 24 team on their win last night. And I'll just again say congrats to the competitors for putting on a phenomenal show at last night's race in Atlanta. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Let's go racing.